Hello, my friends. This is Baal Kadmon, and I would like to thank you for listening and or watching this podcast. What I am about to share with you today is going to make some people angry. Maybe for some it might be liberating, while for others it may have them question ideas and notions they have held for a lifetime. In either case, my intention is to educate, not to pontificate or give an opinion. Everything you will hear and see today you can research for yourself if you are so inclined. I will present all of the information in a systematic way so you can either follow along with me or research it later. Lucifer is a name that sends chills down the spines of religionists while bestowing empowerment to others. To both sides, he is a vital character, and it's for this reason both sides are going to hate me for this. But this is okay. This must be said. I'm going to structure this podcast in a way that I will start from the top and drill down to the details. I hope you enjoy it. The first inklings of Lucifer. Lucifer, a Latin name, was a middling god of the Roman pantheon whose name was used to personify Venus, so it was more of a descriptive term. In Greek, Venus was known as Phosphoros, which means light bringer, and alternatively Eophosphoros, or bringer of the dawn. In Roman literature, Lucifer does not have any prominent role. In fact, many didn't even consider him a true deity, but rather a descriptive term. In pagan circles, he is considered the husband of Diana, a goddess I work with quite a bit, and the father of Aradia. Other than that, as far as the Romans were concerned, he wasn't really anything special. I felt I had to include that above information just to give some context as to where the name originally came from. Now let's move on to the core concepts of this podcast. I will present now the foundation for what is to come. The three languages of the Bible. There are only three biblical languages that span the Old and New Testaments: Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. Hebrew is the core language of the Old Testament. Aramaic is found in certain texts of the Old Testament, such as whole sections of Daniel and Ezra, with smatterings throughout other Old Testament texts. Greek is the language of the New Testament. It is also the language of the Septuagint, the first Greek translation of the Old Testament. That's it. There are no other biblical languages. Often people mistake Latin as being a biblical language, but that is not the case. Latin developed an air of biblical sanctification because the Catholic Church made it the official language of the liturgy, and there is a popular Latin translation of the Bible called the Vulgate, the first of its kind, really. There is no sacredness to Latin as far as it pertains to the Bible. Yeah, it might sound cool in rituals and liturgy, but other than that, it is of little spiritual value as it pertains to biblical studies. Don't be fooled when you hear Latin in modern rituals that have no direct connection to Roman spirituality. It is really only for effect. It has as much authenticity as any other language used in translation. However, if one uses Latin in context of Roman rituals and Roman magic, that is another story, since that is the actual spiritual language of that tradition. Other than that, Latin is simply an adopted language of the Church, and mostly for show in the occult. The capitalization of names. In several languages, names are capitalized. No, I'm not saying this to insult your intelligence. It will make sense in a moment. We see capitalized names in English, Latin, and Greek. Hebrew does not have upper and lower case. Here are a few examples. Abraham is both the same in English and in Latin. In Greek, Avram, with a capital Alpha. Adam, in English, Adamus in Latin, and in Greek, Adamus, with a capital Alpha. Jesus in English, Isus in Latin, and Isus in Greek, capital Iota. Satan in English, Satanas in Latin, in Greek, Satana and Satanas, both with capital Sigma. You get the picture. This applies to all names in these languages. You will see why I'm mentioning this in a moment. The verse that started it all. The whole concept of Lucifer and his supposed fall originates from this one verse in the Old Testament, Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12. Let us take a look at this in English, Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. In English,
How you have fallen from heaven, morning star, son of the dawn! You have been cast down to the earth, you who once laid low the nations. In Hebrew, Ech nafalta meshamayim, Hillel ben Shachar, nigdata la'aretz, cholesh al goim. In Greek, Pos exepesen, ektu uranu, o eiosforos, o proi antelon, sin etrivi, is tin in, o apestelon, prospanda ta ethni. In Latin, Quomodo cecedisti, decaelo Lucifer, qui mane uriebaris, coeristi interam, qui vulnerabas gentas.
The term for morning star, son of the dawn, is Hillel ben Shachar, which literally means morning star, son of the dawn in Hebrew. In Greek, we have the word eosphoros, or the bringer of the dawn. On the surface, this seems to indicate some kind of angelic being falling from heaven. The Latin usage, the term Lucifer, seems fair enough. However, looks are deceiving. I will give 2 reasons why the usage of Lucifer is not being used to indicate an angel or any kind of fall from heaven. In fact, there is no indication of any angelic being at all here. But rather, it is used as a description in all versions of this verse I just read. When occultists and Christians alike quote Isaiah chapter 14 verse 12, they quote it in isolation. They do not take it in context of the rest of the chapter. In fact, Christianity does this so many times within the New Testament. Let us look at a verse before verse 12. Isaiah chapter 14 verse 4 makes it clear that all verses to follow are referring to the king of Babylon. Let's read it. Isaiah 14:4. That thou shalt take up this parable against the king of Babylon. Everything after that point is a parable about the king of Babylon's fall and how God has punished him. It is plain as day, even in English. To make my case that it was commonplace for Christians to take verses out of context and in turn occultists doing the same, let's take a look at this example. Matthew chapter 2 verses 13 through 15. When they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. Get up, he said, take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him. So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt, where he stayed until the death of Herod. And so was fulfilled what the Lord had said through the prophet, out of Egypt I call my son. Notice that last verse. Out of Egypt I called my son. Matthew is quoting Hosea chapter 11 verse 1. The problem is, he is only quoting half the verse, not even the full verse, just half. Let's read the entire verse. Hosea 11:1. When Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. As you can see, the son God is talking about is the nation of Israel, not a future prophet or a Messiah or a literal son. The writers of the New Testament left that part out, of course, to serve their needs. It is the same thing with Isaiah chapter 14 verse 12. The verse is being quoted in isolation. In fact, it means something completely different. If that is not convincing enough, here is more proof that Lucifer is a descriptive term and not the name of any being. Remember when I mentioned that names are capitalized in Latin? Here, take a look at some of these verses. One with Abraham, one with the names Jesus, David, and Abraham, and Satan. Take a look for a moment. Notice that they are all capitalized, the names. Now let's look at Isaiah chapter 14 verse 12 in Latin, where Lucifer is mentioned, and let's take a look at that. Notice anything strange about the word Lucifer? It is not capitalized, and the reason for that is because it is not a name, it is a description. Morning star is a description, not only in Latin, but also in Greek. It's simply descriptive and not necessarily a bad or a good thing, it's simply the morning star. Some might say, well, perhaps the Latin translators didn't want to dignify the name Lucifer with a capital, and therefore they wanted to insult him by keeping the L lowercase. I've actually heard this before, that's why I'm mentioning it. Well, if that was true, then what about the name of Satan? Take a look at these from Matthew chapter 4, Mark chapter 1, Luke chapter 22. Look at that. Satan is capitalized in every instance in Latin. So those two facts alone should raise many red flags. But let's keep going. As you've seen, Greek names when translated into Hebrew still sound like Hebrew. Abraham, or Avraham in Hebrew, in Greek, Avram. Adam in Hebrew is Adamus in Greek. Jesus, or Jesus, or Yeshu, is Iisus in Greek. Satan is Satana, or Satanas in Greek. This applies to pretty much every single name in the Bible. Yet oddly enough, why doesn't Eosphoros sound like the Hebrew Hillel ben Shachar? This is because, unlike the other names above, Eosphoros was not being used as a name. It was used as a description and it had nothing, it wasn't a name. And that's why it doesn't sound like Hillel ben Shachar, like the other names sound like their Hebrew equivalent. Here, let me show you in Greek a few examples from the Bible that illustrate that phosphoros is being used as a description and not a name. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 19. I'm going to give you 3 English translations so you can get an idea of how this verse is being translated. And then we're going to look at the Greek.
New International Version. We also have the prophetic message as something completely reliable, and you will do well to pay attention to it, as to the light shining in a dark place, until the day dawns and the morning star rises in your hearts. That's a good thing, right? Contemporary English Version. All of this makes us even more certain that what the prophet said is true, so you should pay close attention to their message, as you would to a lamp shining in some dark place. You must keep on paying attention until daylight comes and the morning star rises in your hearts. Morning star is actually a good thing here. You see that? King James Version. We have also a more sure word of prophecy, whereunto ye do well that ye take heed, as unto a light that shineth in a dark place, until the day dawn and the day star arise in your hearts. Now you're going to see in Greek that the term here for day star, which is a good thing, is the same name that people use for Lucifer. Let's read the Greek. Και εχόμεν θεθεότερον των προφητικον λόγων ο καλός ποιείται προσεχόντες ως λίχνο θένοντι εν αχμηρό τόπο ως ου ημέρα διαβγάσει και φωσφόρος ανατύλει εν τες καρδίες ημών.
As you can see, phosphoros is a description. And not only that, look at the word for phosphoros. The letter phi is in lowercase. So you see, the text often ascribed to mean Lucifer as a fallen angel does not mean that at all. It is a complete mistranslation and misunderstanding that has traveled down throughout the ages and infected the occult space as well, since all occult texts are highly reliant on Latin translations of biblical texts as well as the English. I know that is not easy to hear, I understand, but it is right there. You can research this all for yourself. As an added bonus, I want to address another fallacy that is often bandied about that is related to this. Some equate Lucifer and Jesus to be the same being. Well, we already established that Lucifer is not a being in the Bible, but let's, for argument's sake, say that he is, just to illustrate this point. There is a verse in the book of Revelations in English that says that Jesus equated himself with the morning star and is thus Lucifer. Let's take a look. Revelations chapter 22, verse 16. I, Jesus, have sent my angel to give you this testimony for the churches. I am the root and offspring of David, and the bright morning star. Now the Greek.
Ego Iisus epemsa ton angelomu mantirise imin tafta epites ecclesies ego imi eriza ke to yenos tu David o astir o lambros ke othrinos.
So as you can see, the morning star is not eosphoros or phosphoros in this verse. It's o astir o lambros ke othrinos, which means the star that shines brightly in the morning. In Latin, that same term, the bright morning star, is stella splendida et matutina, which means splendid or bright star of the morning. So you see, even the Greek and Latin agrees this is not the same reference as being used in Isaiah chapter 14:12. If it was, they would have used the term Lucifer or phosphoros in Greek. It's very different, as you can see. Lambros ke orthinos. It's very different. So no, Jesus is not equating himself with Lucifer, even though it is translated like that in English only. So why is the Lucifer idea so enduring? Despite the above proving that it shouldn't be, we can thank the likes of John Milton in Paradise Lost and Dante's Inferno for this. Many without knowing are going and referencing Lucifer and all these things and aspects of Lucifer and the devil that are not even biblical. They're actually from literature. And like I said, from John Milton's Paradise Lost and Dante's. But because people don't read the Bible fully, they don't really realize that that's happening. Like, for example, the term cleanliness is close to godliness. People say, oh, it's in the Bible. No, it's not. It's never been written there. That's from a sermon. So many, without knowing they are doing so, are referencing literature and not the actual Bible itself. This causes original ideas to become convoluted. That is not me saying this. I mean, you can look it up for yourself. Milton and Dante shaped our concept of Lucifer and the devil in ways the Bible could never do. Yet many assume these concepts are indeed biblical or from the church. They are not. So the ultimate moral of this podcast is that never take a translation at face value. If a text you are reading is either a translation or has an element of a translation, please always do your research. As you can see, even the slightest errors or misunderstandings can create dangerous and long-lasting effects throughout history. We have all the resources at our disposal now. You can do these word studies for free. So I'm begging you, please dig deep into these texts we often see in the occult and see if you can find the truth of the matter and not simply trust an English translation of an English translation ad infinitum. I know it may sound difficult, and it is, but if you really want to learn this stuff, that's the way it's supposed to be. You really should study it. Yes, it will take a long time, but wouldn't you rather know for sure? I would. So that is all I have for you, my friends. I apologize for those who may take offense to this, but it is right there for all to see. And please note that I'm not saying there was no fall of the angels, but what I am saying, with some certainty, is that Lucifer was not one of those angels. Speak to you soon, so mote it be.